Hello YouTube, welcome to another episode of Last Chance Rotary. You know, we try to bring you the best content in Last Chance Rotary. We're just getting started. And what I want to do with this channel is bring you the best unique rotary engine content I can. So last episode you may have seen all the activity that went on with Blue, but I gotta admit, didn't get through that without some help. I mentioned briefly my friend Greg took me under his wing, showed me how to work on Blue. Now I'm an owner, operator, maintainer of Blue. 3 key words. Well, today I got a special guest for you, and I hope you appreciate, like I do, what you're going to see today, because this is an exclusive Last Chance Rotary episode you may not see anywhere else. Okay, without further delay, I'm going to introduce the guest of Last Chance Rotary today. There you have it, viewers. We're going to get right into it here in a minute. Okay, Last Chance Rotary. If I don't have your attention now, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get your attention. But you can see here beside me, we got something pretty special. So what I want to do is I want to introduce the owner of this car. Greg, why don't you come on over and introduce yourself?
Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
All right, what do you got here, Greg? This is my friend Greg.
Well,
you know,
what I have here, this is my Last Chance Rotary, because this car slipped through importation when Mazda stopped importing rotaries in 1976. So this is my Last Chance Rotary.
So this has a rotary engine in
Yes.
it?
Yep, 13B. Carbureted, and about 20% of the parts in this car eventually ended up over in that car.
Okay. Wow, it's beautiful. I know I've never seen one, and I'm not sure if the viewers, I'd like to hear your comments down in the comment section if you have seen one of these out in the wild. I'd love to hear about it. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's take a look around. So Greg, tell me what you got here.
Well, I acquired this car in 1976. It was one of the few cars that made it across the ocean in left-hand drive before Mazda stopped all importation. And I've had it since new, and it was like love at first sight. The first one I saw was a dealer's demo, and that is imprinted in my mind since then, and I determined that I would get one.
So this is a 1976 car?
1976, and in 1976, $9,000 for a Japanese car was totally ridiculous. Japanese cars were inexpensive, small, fuel conservative cars. And believe me, I had to really adjust my budget to get this car. Nobody gave it to me. But as I owned it, I began to find out more and more why I actually like it. First of all, this is a Marcello Gondini style. For those of you who don't know, Marcello Gondini and Giugiaro are probably the 2 best Italian stylists. Marcello Gondini has done the Lamborghini Countach, several other cars. And if you look at his work, you kind of see right away his styling cues. One of them is he likes to work with trapezoid shapes. He likes to take the fender hood and crease it in towards the center. Almost all of his cars have much bigger back glass than front. When you pick up on those things, then you can understand why he's a famous Italian designer. So what you have here is a Japanese car styled by an Italian, which was common for all Mazda Rotaries up until this car, and then the RX-7 was Mazda's own first styling attempt. The RX-2s, 3s, and 4s, they were all Italian designs. So I sort of feel like I have an Italian design car. A German Wanko engine is built by the Japanese. I mean, you can't get any three better combinations than that. Okay, the styling cue here you pick up right away is this little window. This is actually a very functional little window. It lets air out of the car. You also have an air exhaust here. And it makes the car very rigid because you add an extra pillar. You have your A pillar, B pillar, C, and then your D pillar. And all of that ties the roof into the body of the car. All of that creates a lot of rigidity. Also, in the middle of the Cosmo roof, underneath the sheet metal, is a central running rib. So you'll never see a Cosmo with a sunroof. All right, at the time, 1976, for those of you around, there are some things that really caught my eye right off the bat. First of all, side glass is curved. This was really a big thing. At that time, everybody had flat glass. You had a curved windshield, that was about it. So we have curved glass here. This back window also curved, goes up and down. Nice little curve to it. It's like compounded curve. We'll go around the back and look. The tail lights are compound curves. The little details caught my eye. Okay, the wheels. At this time, most of your foreign cars, Lamborghinis and Ferraris, all had cast alloy wheels. So Mazda went that route with their own cast alloy wheel. And it's quite unique. This 4-spoke wheel is only on this year's car. You won't see it anywhere else. It has stainless inserts for the lug nuts. This doesn't have, these are actually nuts, and they're lug studs that stick out of them. You got disc brakes, all 4 corners, and the brakes are kind of unique in that they sit on a machine mortised pedestal that allows the caliper to slide back and forth and find the center of the rotor. It has trailing arm, looks like a piece of the Brooklyn Bridge under here. Trailing arm goes from the rear axle clean up into here. It is a live axle rear car, but it's 5 links, watt linkage, torsion bars, trailing arms. So it holds the road pretty good. Front is typical McPherson strut. And in the windshield here is the radio antenna embedded in the glass. That's the first time I ever seen that. In 1976, you usually got a stiff antenna right here. You just lived with it. That's the way it was. All right, you might notice a lot of things on this car that if you have an RX-7, you picked up on already. First of all, this is your mirror. This mirror, 4 years later, ended up on the first gen RX-7. The mirror control, the plugs, the wires, and everything is the same. Take a close look at his door handle. This is your RX-7 door handle, only chrome. The lock is in the same position. So there's a lot of pieces to this car that 4 years later ended up on the RX-7.
So Greg, the paint looks great. Is this the original paint job?
No, the original paint was a typical Mazda paint, and after I had the car a few years, a friend of mine who was a very good body man said, Greg, there's a paint that you should be interested in that's going to be outlawed by the EPA, and it's called Emerald, DuPont Emerald. And he said, it's a very nice enamel paint, and he said, I'd like to paint your car. It was like he was asking to paint something worthwhile. And I said, well, I don't really need a paint job. He said, Greg, believe me, you should do this. So I actually had a car painted that didn't need painting, but it was one of the best things I did. This Emerald paint, I rarely wash and wax this car. Emerald paint is a nice thick enamel, and unfortunately today's paint, and even the paint on Mike's car, is a water-based paint. That's all concession to EPA. Great. Okay.
So I'm familiar, Greg, with the and maybe some reviewers are, the first Cosmo.
Yes.
This is certainly much different looking than that
Yeah.
that Cosmo. Can you maybe tell us the bridge between the two?
Okay. The first Cosmo was the name of the first Mazda's rotary car, and it had a 110 engine. You can see that car in Jay Leno's site, although he has transplanted a 13B into it. And I think it was more of a test bed than anything else, because the styling of the first gen Cosmo, if you look at it close and you know your car, just see about the styling of 6 different cars in there. There's a little bit of Lotus in the fender, there's a little bit of British Stag on one side. If you look real close, there's even a little bit of Ford Thunderbird in that Cosmo.
Yeah, it's an interesting car.
And that was called the Cosmo. I believe the internal designation was CA or something. This is what's called a CD in Japan. You have your FAFB series. This is a CD series. And in Japan, this car was called the Cosmo 2000 AP Super Coupe. And what that referred to was AP meant anti-pollution. And Mazda felt that this car would be good for pollution standards to the year 2000. So it was called the 2000 AP Super Coupe. Sold for like 1.4 million yen, which I don't remember the exchange rate back then, but I know over here it came down to about 9,000. For $3,500 you could get a RX-2. So it was a big leap.
Now the first gen, is this a second generation Cosmo?
No, this is what we would probably call the second generation Cosmo. There were 2 generations of the first Cosmo, which are identical in appearance. But this is the breakaway design here. This is the second gen Cosmo. And there were several of these in the following years. And Mazda basically went around and just started changing little things, headlight shapes and things like that.
So
in Japan, there's also a Cosmo 121, which does not have a rotary engine. And a lot of those went to Australia. And you can pick it out right away by looking at the steel wheels and things like that, and the exhaust.
Same
but the
car,
body is
but had
the same.
a piston engine in it.
Yeah. Okay. Mazda did that to a lot of the rotaries. There were piston engines in a lot of the early rotaries, different models.
Now, on the first gen, I'm going to call it the first gen, the one that Galen has. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe there's any left-hand drive of that version of car.
Yeah, the idea was Mazda's plan was to send one of these to every dealer as a demo. And I don't really know how many they sent. I'm taking a guess. It's got to be less than 100.
That's a great question for the viewers.
Yeah,
if you have any information on that, put it down in the comments section.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to know what other people think of how many of these were imported.
Right.
Left-hand drive Cosmos, this generation in the 70s before obviously Japan stopped.
That might require a trip to Hiroshima.
It may require
a 6-month knock on doors. So I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah. If anyone in Hiroshima is watching this, we would love to contact
Yes,
you.
find out how many of these were sent over before the president of Mazda stopped all rotary sales in North America.
Now, why did he do that?
He did that because at that time he was up against 2 big problems. Number one, the big 3, Detroit, never liked the rotary. They would go out of their way to badmouth it. Also, the EPA decided that they would put stickers on windows and give you the projected mile per gallon. Well, the way they did the test, they would put a very small amount of fuel in the car, start it for a minute or 2, and from that extrapolate how far you could go. It had nothing to do with the aerodynamics or rolling resistance or anything. Well, Mazda rotaries are choke start. You pull the choke start this car, well, the number that came up on this car and all the rotaries was 9 miles to the gallon.
And we know better than that.
We know better than that. I had rotaries when I first saw that sticker. It was bogus to me. I realized it was all front. Well, the president of Mazda, Matsuda, took it pretty deep. He's a car guy. And he said, okay, I just won't send you any. And he stopped all sales. And for 2 years, there was no Rotaries came into the country. Only these few left-hand drive Cosmos were already in shipment. Now in Japan, the right-hand Cosmo, it sold 50,000. It was the Japanese car of the year. In the United States, I don't know, we sold 60 maybe. Okay,
Not
big
so much.
difference there. But if you look at Matsuda's background, he was a definite car guy. He was not only the president of Mazda, he was a car guy. And I think that was one of the reasons he went to the Italian designers. And voila, this is one of his creations.
This car seems to be right at the end of the era where if you could dream it, you could make it.
Yeah.
And that's probably right at the cusp of government regulation,
Right.
things kicking in.
Yes.
And
Exactly
unfortunately,
right.
this car kind of got caught in the middle of that, right
Yes.
smack in the middle of it.
Right. Yeah.
So, fantastic, beautiful.
From here on down, cars had to meet certain regulations, and the stylists were forced into smaller and smaller choices. And today's cars, I cannot honestly tell you the difference between a car today unless I stand right up to it.
This car is basically all original,
Yes.
but you have done some small, tasteful
There are
things.
some small changes.
Kind of like blue.
Yeah,
Okay, we've done
small
things.
changes I made, but
I'm
they
thinking-
all can be reverted back to the way the car was, because I'm big on originality.
You want to, like, one thing I'm noticing is, like,
Yeah.
like the mud flaps.
Yeah.
Is that
The-
one thing that
Those
was
are mud
added?
flaps for the Mazda 626.
Oh, okay.
And I put them on because I understand of how grit and dirt, especially
Yep.
from your front,
Destroy your paint.
rips up your car. So I put them on, they will come off, but no Mazda ever had these mud flaps.
And when we talked before, you'd indicate you did something under the wheel wells?
Yeah, as a younger person with time on my hands, I decided to become a body man, but not where you could see it. I wanted to work where you couldn't see it. And so under each wheel well, I actually incorporated stainless steel plates with stainless rivets. So this car is super stiff with that stainless beefing up the regular steel. I did all 4 wheels. It took me all winter. And
And you did that because this car, correct me if I'm wrong, was not a garage queen
No.
in its day. It is
No.
now, I mean, although
Right.
it's driven. But in the day, it was your
Yeah.
family car, right? Am I right?
yeah, I drove this car to work. I did things with it that right now I would faint at doing.
Could you give an example of one of those?
Well, one of those, one day I decided to take this car deer hunting. And we have a lot of deer, and it didn't take me long to kill one. Well, how to take it home? Well, I'm not going to put it over the fender. I'm not that dumb. But I decided to put it in the trunk.
Yeah.
And it did fit in there. I rearranged it and pushed its feet in and head down and everything, put it in the trunk, and went to the butcher shop. When we got there, rigor mortis had set in. We couldn't get that deer out of there. So I spent several hours cutting the deer up in my Cosmo trunk.
And I
I
think
got
that-
him out of there.
and I-
Never left a mark.
And that's probably my favorite thing of this car, besides what it is in its own right. But this car was used. This,
Yes.
and I'm going to go ahead and prompt you, Greg. I want to talk about again, and I've seen this in my other videos. Rotary engine reliability. This car was bought in 1976. Greg, was the engine ever rebuilt?
Never. Everything in that engine is as it is when it left Hiroshima. Of course, I've worked on stuff outside of the engine, water pump,
Yeah,
brake,
typical maintenance.
normal wear and tear items. But I've never had to do anything internally to the engine, and I believe a lot of that has to do with what oil you use, how you drive it, and things of that nature.
All right, if it's anything else to cover on this side, Greg, because I think what I'd like to do is maybe we can go
Well,
around back.
Want to give them a front and back look here?
Yeah, maybe we'll go around back. We'll show the audience what the back looks like.
I
And
have
we'll go
some
from there.
interesting things for you.
All right. Okay, Greg, show
All
us
right,
what we got
first
here
of
in the
all,
back.
these tail lights I think are kind of neat. The way they come up and wrap around. And they're not just plain flat plastic. This is compound curves. In 1976, this was tough to do, you know. And just a little styling thing they threw in there, running the chrome all the way around.
Greg, was this one of the first lights that was all in one versus individual?
I don't remember that being the case.
Kind of right there in that era where they transitioned.
I believe this was the era when we went to the orange turn signal.
Okay.
The orange turn was a big deal.
That was in Europe only at one point, right?
Yeah, and I came over here, I think Volkswagen Beetles were the first I saw that orange turn signal. Now, I don't believe that's the regulation, but I believe at one time that was turn signals would be a different color. Okay, first of all, being a $9,000 car, I'm going to open the hood, and it's torsion bar lifted. There are torsion twisted bars that are going to lift this up. Okay, no prop rod, there's no springs here in your way.
That's amazing.
There are hidden twisted bars, torsion bars, underneath there to bring that up nice and gentle.
Very nice. When we had a deer in here.
I had a deer in
Nice.
here, and he fit quite nicely, but he didn't want to come out. Okay, some of the things I keep in here. This particular emblem, when I was in Tokyo from 1969 till 1972, I would go up and down the streets and search out offices with this emblem because I couldn't speak Japanese. And I would go in there and pester those guys until they'd throw me out of there.
So the audience isn't aware, you lived in Japan
Yes.
for 2 years?
I was very fortunate. I was in the service, but I was stationed right in Tokyo, right down in the busiest part of Tokyo. And we'll go into how I got into my Rotary the first time.
Yep.
Other stuff I have down here. Okay, this book is written by my good friend John Trass. And I don't know if this is still in publication. You can search it and get it out. But John and I worked together on this, and he goes over all of the cars that were Mazda cars that were available at the time of publication. Thankfully, John signed this.
Very nice.
And inside here is a Mazda Cosmo, and this is this Mazda Cosmo.
Oh, it's that actual car.
This is my
beautiful.
Cosmo right here. John featured it here. He talks about it, and in the back here, the last section is how the rotary engine works, and I was very influential in putting that together. Okay, right here we have Auto Week 1994. And Auto Week used to do a section in their magazine of what's called escape roads. And escape roads looked at an older car whenever they introduced a newer car. So April 1994, they introduced the Mazda Millennium, which was a big failure, as we all know. But they wanted a car, an older car, that they could tie into this Mazda technology. So lo and behold, they knock on my door from Auto Week. Now, how did they find me? Well, they got on the Mazda of North America and found out who was buying Cosmo parts. Came to my door and asked if they could do a article, and they did. And here it is in Escape Roads is
great.
my Mazda Cosmo. And if you can dig this up maybe on the internet, maybe you can get a back units. Okay. Here we have.
That's really great history. Great stuff.
This is for you guys that aren't really know everything about all the models. But here is a truckload of Mazda models about to leave Hiroshima for the United States. And what's nice about it, they put one of every car. Okay, you recognize, here's your Cosmo, and behind that we have the RX-3. And then we have your RX-2, and we have your RX-4. And in the background here is a piston engine. I believe they call it a Familia. But in Japan, these cars didn't have those names at all. The Cosmo has always carried the Cosmo name. But the RX-2 was called Capella. Well, in 1972, you're going to sell an American person a car with the name of Capella. Okay, it's just not going to sink. But it's the star. I think it's the 6th brightest star in the sky, which means nothing to anybody in 1972. So the RX, this is called the Capella. The RX-3 is the Savannah. And actually the RX-7 is a generation of Savannah. The 1978 Savannah was replaced with what we call the RX-7.
Yeah. first gen RX-7
Japan
was
is
considered
still
Savannah
called
in Japan.
Savannah.
Wow.
Okay. So how did they get the X names? Well, when the Capella came over, it was called the Capella R/2, meaning it had 2 rotors. Well, there was RX2.
Yeah.
Apparently somebody in the United States says, well, hey, X, you know, we got Jaguar X, we got the Z X.
Yeah, that sounds
so
like
they
a little
ran with
jazzy
the X.
with the X in there.
So the Capella RX2 became RX2, and with the RX3, what are we going to call that? We're going to call that RX3, and the car down here is in Japan called the Luce. And in Japan, I remember the guys in the office would go, Luce, Luce. And I'm like, I want a Mazda. I said, no, Luce. And like, come to find, Luce is upscale Mazda car. And the Luce came over here as RX4. So that's the way it went. And now we all refer to them as RXs. As a matter of fact, having done the RX sequence, they decided to call the Cosmo RX5 later on in Australia. It's really Cosmo. Okay. So here's a brochure I got. Look at that. This is the Cosmo brochure at the dealership that I would salivate over and drip all over. And we're going to look at actually parts of this car. But you got a waterfall grille, and it came in silver, sort of a misty silver. It came in blue, white, sunrise red, never black. You never saw a Japanese black car until 89 maybe or something. It was very, very, even RX, I think one of the first black cars I saw was the SE. Japan just don't make black cars.
That's strange.
So here's the Cosmo. Consumer Digest somehow got one of these cars, and they rated it as the most highest rated car they have ever tested. Well, all of this was great, except there was no cars to sell. The Consumer Digest, of all people.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate they stopped importing.
Okay, we're going to look at the dash for real, but here's your photograph of it. Now, some Cosmos actually came with an automatic, but anyone who's had a Rotary probably would detest having an automatic, but they did come in automatic. And some of the features of the Rotary. And here they're showing you the airflow of how the air comes in the front and then comes out the little window in the back. And it really does have really good airflow. And that's kind of nice because you can get a nice cool thing without turning on the air, and that's a nice feature. Okay.
Great.
Shall we go around to the front?
Yeah. So we'll take reviews around the front. Maybe we can pop the hood, take a look.
Yes, let's look under the hood.
Okay.
Okay, again, we have torsion rods lifting this up. None of those ugly Detroit coil springs and prop rods, okay? The rods are actually hidden behind the waterfall grill. All right, I'm a stickler on originality, so all the changes I made in here can be swapped back over to original. But the changes I made were changes that really make the car a lot better to drive. Number one change, this car came with point ignition system. It actually had leading points, trailing points, and the Cosmo even had a third set of points for retarded cold start. And points are okay, but you have to constantly be tending to them. So I quickly, when the SE came out, I realized, okay, here's a distributor from my 13B with electronic ignition. Dropped it right in, and all the wire connections I made with easy to disconnect plugs so I can swap right back. The other thing I did is I took out the normal air cleaner and went to the Racing Beat because it's a foam element. I can take that foam element out and wash it and reuse it. With a paper element, it's really, as it gets dirtier, you lose efficiency and you can't clean it. I put in a cross solid aluminum bar tying the 2 struts together, give the engine bay, which is not, if you think about it, your engine bay is like a box without a top. And a box without a top has no rigidity. You put a top on that box and all of a sudden you pick up enormous amount of strength. Okay, what do we have under here that's different? We have, for 1976, a rollover fuel cutoff. Now, I don't know if Mazda did that on their own, but I don't believe it was a EPA requirement. That this car rolls over and this little device shuts your fuel off. As Mike said, you're looking at the engine that was in this car the day I bought it. I've had the radiator reconditioned. It's a copper radiator. I've put in a new viscous fan over some 40 some years now. Alternator, and just little items that would normally go out in it that period of time. New voltage regulator, and I've done the clutch master slave, and my power steering is original. I've never touched it whatsoever. I'll tell you the truth, I've never had to add fluid. I just suck it out and put new fluid in. Power steering works beautiful in this car. It's nice. I think it makes the car enjoyable to drive. What you have here is my oil injection system is clear lines. I took out the metal lines because I like to see if my car is injecting oil. And while we're on the subject of oil, if there's anything I can leave your viewers with, it's the oil you use on your rotary. The rotary burns oil. It injects the oil in from the oil metering pump and it burns it. So the oil has to burn clean. And Pennsylvania crude oil burns clean. It's like 7 million or 4 million years older than regular Texas oil. Now, today's synthetic oil is probably better as an oil, but it doesn't burn at all. So if you're going to run synthetic oil in your rotary, you better going to have to pre-mix. Because if you were to get it to try and burn it, you can actually do this at home. Put some oil in a pan and set it on fire, heat it up. And you can see the quality of the Pennsylvania crude oil. Pennsylvania crude oil has a unique feature in that if you shine ultraviolet light on it, it actually glows. And I think even here in bright daylight with a UV light, you'll see how it glows back. So I can actually look down there and see that I'm injecting oil into the base of my Hitachi 4-barrel. You can even see your dipstick. Okay, Pennsylvania oil glows green, and it has to do with the purity of it and the age of it. It's also a nice feature to find a leak. If you had a leak on your oil pan or your oil cooler,
and we're using
whatever, you could pick it up right away.
We're using Brad Penn oil.
Yes. When I first started Pennsylvania crude oil, you had Quaker State, Pennzoil, and Kendall. Well, Kendall was the only Pennsylvania crude oil that came in 2050 weight. And that was one of the problems with most rotary engine owners. They never read their manual. They never looked at the oil specification on the hood. And it recommends 2050 weight. And in 1976, 2050 was hard to get. But Kendall was producing 2050 Pennsylvania crude. So I used Kendall for many years, but then they were bought out. Pennzoil, I don't ever believe it maybe even was Pennsylvania oil, but whatever. In the interim, a company called Brad Penn, and Brad Penn, the first part of Brad designates Bradford, PA, and that's where oil was first discovered in that area.
And for anybody nearby, there's a museum in Bradford. It's kind of a neat stop in if you're in the area to look at that.
Yeah, Brad Penn oil 2050. I highly recommend it if you're going to use your oil metering pump. And hey, I have close to 150,000 miles on this engine, so there's a testimony to it. Use the right oil. Do not expect power from the car until it warms up, because you have a very powerful engine in a small area. It will heat up super quick in the center, and the heat won't be able to gravitate out through the whole engine. You'll basically warp your engine. So what I liked most about a rotary at first was the fact that I knew all the problems that a piston engine had. All the problems I saw as a kid at the garage that they were working on over and over, head gaskets and valves and everything like that. So when the rotary came along, I mean, it caught my attention because I didn't want to go down that route. I don't know if I was really looking for the performance of a rotary. I think I was looking for the reliability. And this car in the brochure is guaranteed for 5 years or 75,000 miles, period.
And that was a lot back in the 1970s.
That's the extent of the warranty. One sentence. Your car now, your warranty is a book bigger than your maintenance
50
book.
pages.
With all the disclaimers. There was no disclaimers. 5 years or 50,000 miles.
Yeah.
Or no, excuse me. I believe this one was 5 years and 75,000 miles. Whichever. I exceeded that a long time, but I never expected to even use that warranty.
So Greg, I noticed just little things. I noticed there's 3 bottles on the other side. One's radiator, I assume. The other one's windshield wiper. What's the third one?
Well, I believe even your car has the third one, doesn't it?
I believe so, yeah.
The third one is a 90% antifreeze, and it is a sub-zero starting assist fluid. And the purpose of it is, with a carbureted engine, you can get frozen throttle plates. And your carburetor will freeze up from moist, freezing air coming in or setting overnight. So the sub-zero starting assist mechanism feeds right into the carburetor, and it actually injects in antifreeze before you start. And that antifreeze will drip down through your carburetor and free the butterflies. I don't know of any other car that's done that, and I know that was a typical problem with carbureted engines. And I believe that system is still used on the fuel injection engine. So that's a Mazda first there. The other bottle, you know, is your windshield washer, and then your overflow. Okay. You have a viscous fan. The first time I ever saw a viscous fan in my life was on a Corvette. I really didn't understand it. But the principle is, if you're going down a road, the air intake velocity greater than what the fan is turning, you're actually retarding the air coming in through your radiator. So when you reach that amount, it's going to utilize forced air flow. It is going to override the fan. Now this is done with a viscous coupling. When you stop though, the fan then starts to grip and you get good cooling when you're at idle. It's probably one of the items you should pay attention to on your Rotary. If your car starts to overheat in the hot summer at idle, check this thing out, replace it. You don't have to buy the whole plastic fan, just the viscous coupling. Do not try to repair it. It's a sealed unit with fluid in there. Just go ahead, bite the bullet, buy the viscous coupling, put it on, you're good to go. Something I do on all of my cars, we have digital temperature gauge these days. Utilize it. They're very cheap. Right now we're using them to test for coronavirus. Use it on your car. Whenever your car is running like you want it, go around and take measurements at the thermostat, at the upper radiator hose. Notice I have a 150 up here. That indicates that's my operating temperature at the upper radiator hose when things are working right, okay? And these are little clues to keep your motor running right. Oil filters, I have used them all. The big Mazda Blues, the little ones. Quality oil filter, change it. You shouldn't have any problem. Spark plugs, BR8 ETs. You may want to try a BR87 ET on a Rotary. It's up to you. The difference is one is for hot driving. The other one is for more relaxed driving. It's a heat range of the plug. So try either one and pull it out after several thousand miles and take a look at it and see how it's doing. If it's carboning up, go to a hotter plug. Okay?
This is great, Greg. Okay, can we go around the front of the car, take a look? All right. Okay, Greg, let's look at the front here.
Okay, this particular grill is called a waterfall grill, and it's probably clean back in the 40s. You would see this type of grill, and it's been used in different cars. You see a lot of this on Buicks, and I don't know if Marcello Gondini wanted this type of a grill. Mazda might have decided this later. I think Gondini's design ended at what Mazda let them do what they wanted to do, the compliance for lights and things like that. But it's a nice nice grill comes down all the way around. If you look carefully in there, you'll see the torsion rods I was telling you about. They're twisted rods that open the hood up. Headlights, I've never gone to the new higher intensity headlights because honestly now I don't drive the car at night that much. I'm driving it infrequently because I want to keep it with me. But I believe, I would not doubt that 2 of these headlights are the original headlights. These driving lights underneath here, I put those on. Cosmos did not come with those. Also in 1976, there was a mandate that the car must survive a 15-mile-an-hour impact. So there were rubber overriders here that bolted onto these places right here. I took those off and I painted the car.
Still have them.
Still have them. I can put them on. They're hideous as the day is long, but you can bang into walls all the time.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, this bumper was chrome originally, am I right?
Yes, originally all Cosmos had a chrome bumper. It is one of the first shock bumpers. There are shocks under there that absorb it. This bumper will go all the way back to here. That's why we have this panel here. And this is flexible rubber. And that was a mandate for 1976.
Very nice. I notice how it swoops down, comes a little bit to a point on the sides. Then you have some of these styling lines here. Very nice. I notice on the side, the viewers can't see it, turn signals much more flush than on blue.
Okay, I think it's time for a drive.
Okay, how about it, YouTube? Go for a drive, and I'm going to interview Greg in the car. He's got a couple more interesting facts to share with us. We'll also get a look at the interior.